Hey guys, tonight we drift along the Nile's glassy waters, where moonlight dances on papyrus reeds and crocodiles lurk just out of sight. You're in ancient Egypt, sandals sinking into warm mud, the air thick with lotus and sweat. Somewhere nearby, a Hebrew mother weaves a basket, her hands trembling, hoping to save her son from Pharaoh's cruel decree. This is the story of Moses, a man caught between two worlds, destined to face God's wild plans. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this without a few jaw-dropping moments. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Relax, let the world fade, and focus on the journey ahead. Now, dim the lights, close your eyes, and imagine. And let's begin today's journey together. You're standing on the Nile's bank, the river's current tugging at your toes. It's 15th century BCE. Give or take, Egypt's a powerhouse. Its pyramids already ancient. Pharaoh's paranoid, though he's heard the Hebrews are multiplying, and he's not thrilled. His solution: drown their newborn sons. Harsh, right? But one mother, Jochebed, isn't having it. You watch her kneel in the moonlight, her calloused fingers braiding reeds into a tiny ark. She hums softly, maybe a lullaby, maybe a prayer. Her baby, Moses, sleeps inside, chubby cheeks unaware of the stakes. She seals the basket with pitch, her eyes darting for soldiers. You feel her heart race. Will the river carry him to safety or betrayal? The basket bobs away, and you follow, wading through shallow water. Reeds rustle, a hippo snorts in the distance. You're nervous, but there's something calming about the river's rhythm. Jochebed's plan is nuts, yet oddly brilliant. She's banking on someone finding her son, someone kinder than Pharaoh. Scholars still argue whether she chose this spot deliberately, near the royal bathing area. It's a gutsy move, like leaving your kid at a palace gate and hoping for the best. You spot Miriam, Moses' sister, creeping along the bank, her eyes locked on the basket. She's young, maybe 10, but sharp. You admire her grit, stalking through the dark to keep watch. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Egyptian midwives back then used crocodile dung as a sunscreen. Yeah, you heard that right. They'd smear it on to fend off the sun's burn. Imagine the smell as you trail Miriam, the air mixing dung, mud, and fear. You're wondering if Miriam's noticed you yet. She hasn't. Her focus is laser tight on that basket. It snags on a reed, and you hold your breath. Then, a strange event from the Bible. The basket drifts right into the path of Pharaoh's daughter. You see her, draped in linen, her attendants giggling as they splash in the shallows. She spots the basket and freezes. Her eyes soften. You're thinking, no way, she's this lucky. But she lifts the lid, and there's Moses, blinking up at her. You're struck by the irony. Pharaoh's own daughter, raised in luxury, now cradles the child he once dead. Her attendants whisper some say she's reckless. Others say she's bored. One joke floats through your mind. What do you call a princess who adopts a fugitive, a royal pain in Pharaoh's plans? You smirk, but the moment's tender. She names him Moses, meaning drawn out, because she pulled him from the water. You wonder if she knows his Hebrew name, or if Jochebed's nearby, watching, heart in her throat. The Nile keeps flowing, steady as ever, and you feel a strange peace, like God's got this under control. Miriam steps forward, bold as brass, offering to find a Hebrew nurse, Jochebed. Of course, the princess agrees, and you're grinning at the hustle. Moses is safe, for now, suckling at his mother's breast, while Pharaoh's none the wiser. You're ankle deep in the Nile, stars overhead, and the world feels soft, like a dream you don't want to end. But Moses' story is just starting, and you're already hooked, aren't you? You're still by the Nile, its waters lapping at your feet. But now, you're watching a different scene unfold. The basket's gone, and Moses is no longer a baby. You're in the royal palace, or close enough to smell the incense wafting from its hall's myrrh, frankincense, and a hint of that crocodile dung sunscreen you remember from the riverbank. It's years later, and Moses, the Hebrew kid saved by Pharaoh's daughter, is growing up as her son. You're curious, aren't you? How does a boy with Hebrew blood navigate the glittering, cutthroat world of Egypt's elite? Let's slip into the palace and find out. You're standing in a courtyard, marble cool under your soles. Servants bustle past, carrying trays of figs and wine. Moses is maybe 10, his skin tanned from the Egyptian sun, his eyes sharp but guarded. He's dressed in a linen kilt, gold bangles clinking on his wrists, looking every bit the prince. But you notice something off. He's quieter than the other boys, who are laughing and wrestling nearby. You wonder if he feels like an outsider, caught between his Hebrew roots and this adopted life. Scholars still argue whether Moses knew his true heritage as a child. Did Jochebed, his real mother, whisper stories of Abraham and God while she nursed him, or was he raised fully Egyptian, clueless about his people's suffering? You follow him through a corridor, walls painted with gods Anubis, Ra, Osiris staring down with unblinking eyes. Moses pauses at a shrine where a priest burns offerings. You catch a quirky tidbit. Egyptians believed cats were sacred, and killing one, even by accident, could land you in serious trouble. Imagine Moses dodging a stray feline in the palace, worried he'll spark a riot. You chuckle, picturing him tiptoeing around a purring tabby. But the moment passes, and you see him watching the priest, his face unreadable. Does he buy into these gods? Or is something else stirring in his heart now? A strange event from the Bible. Moses, still young, sees Hebrew slaves laboring outside the palace, You're with him at a balcony, peering down at men hauling limestone blocks under the whip. Their groans carry on the wind, and you feel Moses tense. The text doesn't say how old he was when he first noticed the Hebrews' plight, but you imagine this moment, his first real glimpse of their pain. You're struck by the contrast. He's eating pomegranates in a palace while his people eat dust. A joke pops into your head. What's worse than a bad day in Egypt? A bad day as a slave in Egypt. You wince, but it's true. You trail Moses as he slips outside, his sandals slapping against stone. He's not supposed to be here, mingling with workers. But he's curious. You are, too. The air's thick with sweat and sand, and you hear an overseer barking orders. Moses watches a Hebrew man stumble under a load, and you see his fists clench. He's young, but something's brewing anger, maybe, or guilt. You're wondering how a kid processes this. Does he ask his adoptive mother about the slaves? Does she hush him, change the subject? The palace is a bubble, but bubbles burst. You're back in the courtyard now, evening settling over Thebes. Moses is alone, practicing with a reed pen, scratching hieroglyphs on papyrus. You lean closer, catching the faint tremble in his hand. He's learning to read, to rule. But you sense he's searching for something else, identity, maybe, or purpose. The Nile's hum is distant, a reminder of where this all began. You're sinking into the story, the palace fading as your eyelids grow heavy. Moses is safe for now, but you know trouble's coming. That riverbank gamble was just the start, wasn't it? You're back in the palace, the air heavy with jasmine and the faint clink of gold jewelry. Moses is older now, maybe in his 20s, striding through colonnades with the confidence of someone raised as royalty. You're trailing him, your sandals silent on polished stone, catching glimpses of his life as an Egyptian prince with Hebrew blood. The tension's thicker now. Imagine living in a palace where everyone assumes you're one of them, but you're starting to question it all. You're about to see how Moses navigates this double life. And trust me, it's as messy as a Nile flood. You follow him to a banquet hall where nobles sip wine and nibble roasted quail. Moses sits near the high table, his adoptive mother, Pharaoh's daughter, smiling at him. She's proud, but you notice Moses' eyes darting to the servants. Some Hebrew, their faces worn. You're wondering if he's piecing it together his people are slaves, and he's dining on their suffering. Scholars still argue whether Moses was fully aware of his heritage by now. Did Jochebed visit him in secret, whispering of God's covenant, or did he learn it later? A gut punch revelation. You lean closer, trying to read his guarded expression. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. Egyptian nobles shaved their heads and wore wigs to stay cool. Picture Moses adjusting a itchy wig at this feast, sweating under the weight of both linen and lies. You stifle a laugh. Royal fashion was no joke. But the mood shifts as a noble brags about a new pyramid project, boasting about those Hebrew dogs who will build it. Moses' jaw tightens. You feel the air crackle, like a storm's brewing in his chest. He excuses himself, and you slip out after him, heart pounding, outside. You're in the palace gardens, date palms swaying under starlight. Moses paces, alone, muttering to himself. You catch a strange event from the Bible he's wrestling with his identity, though the text doesn't spell it out. You imagine him here, staring at the Nile's distant glitter, asking why he feels so out of place. Was it a single moment, a slave's cry? A cruel joke that made him see the Hebrews as his own? You're standing close, almost hearing his thoughts. The garden's calm, but Moses isn't. You're thinking, buddy, you're in deep now. You trail him to the palace edge, where he gazes at construction sites. Slaves toil under torchlight, their backs bent. You hear a whip crack, and Moses flinches. A joke floats up. What do you call a prince who's bad at keeping secrets? A future fugitive. You smirk, but it's bittersweet. He's not just a prince anymore. He's a man on the edge. You notice his hands, calloused, not from labor, but from gripping his own resolve. The Nile's hum is softer here, a lullaby that doesn't quite soothe. You're sinking deeper into the scene. The palace's glow fading as Moses turns back. He's not ready to act, not yet, but you sense the fuse is lit. The stars above feel like God's eyes, watching, waiting. You're wondering what's next, aren't you? That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank feels like a lifetime ago, but it's all connected. Moses' world is about to crack open, and you're right there with him, drifting on the edge of sleep. You're no longer in the palace's glow. The air is gritty now, thick with dust and the tang of sweat. You're in Thebes' outskirts, where the sun beats down on Hebrew slaves hauling mud bricks. Moses, in his late 20s or early 30s, walks among them, his princely linen swapped for a plainer tunic. You're trailing him, your feet crunching on sand, feeling the weight of his secret he's Hebrew, raised Egyptian, and the divide's tearing him apart today. You'll see him snap, and trust me, it's as jarring as a crocodile splashing out of the Nile. You're near a construction site, the clink of chisels mixing with slaves' grunts. Moses blends in, his head low, but his eyes are sharp, scanning the scene. You notice an Egyptian overseer, whip in hand, barking at a Hebrew man who's staggering under a load. The slave's young, maybe Moses' age, his back striped with welts. You feel Moses' pulse quicken, and yours does, too. Scholars still argue whether Moses planned to intervene or acted on impulse. Was he scouting the site, or did he just stumble into this moment? You're not sure, but the air feels electric. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians used natron, a salty mineral, to dry out bodies for mummification and as toothpaste. Imagine Moses brushing his teeth with that this morning, oblivious to the chaos coming. You chuckle. But the mood's heavy. The overseer raises his whip, and the slave collapses, gasping. You see Moses step forward, his face a mix of rage and resolve. Here's the strange event from the Bible: Moses kills the overseer. You're stunned as he glances around. Then strikes maybe a push, a blow, or a choke. The text doesn't say. The man crumples, sand soaking up his blood. You're frozen, heart pounding. Moses drags the body behind a dune, his hands shaking as he buries it. You're thinking, this is bad, really bad. He's a prince. But this is murder. You hear distant shouts as someone seeing a joke slips in what do you call a prince who's terrible at cover-ups, a wanted man. You wince. But it fits. Moses wipes sweat from his brow, his eyes darting. He's not a killer by nature, but that slave's pain was his pain, and he couldn't stand it. You feel the weight of his choice, like a stone in your chest. You follow him as he slips away. The city's hum fading. He's heading for the palace, but you know he's not safe. Word spreads fast in Thebes someone saw, or someone guessed. You're wondering how he'll face his adoptive mother, or if he'll even try. The Nile's in view, its waters calm, mocking the storm in Moses' heart. You're sinking into the story, the sand's heat lingering on your skin. That riverbank basket feels like a dream now, doesn't it? Moses is no longer a child. He's a fugitive, and you're right there, caught in the tension, your eyelids heavy, but your mind hooked. You're out of Thebes now, the city's golden sprawl, fading behind you as you trudge through hot sand. Moses is ahead, his princely life unraveling like a dropped scroll. He's a fugitive, the overseer's blood still fresh in his mind, and you're following him into the wilderness. The Nile's a distant memory, its lotus-scented breeze replaced by dry wind and the faint bleat of goats. You're headed to Midian, a land of nomads and strangers, where Moses will find refuge, or so he hopes. It's a long walk, and you're feeling the weight of his exile, aren't you? You're on a desert trail, the sun scorching your shoulders. Moses is disheveled, his tunic torn, his eyes scanning for pursuers. He's left everything palace, family, safety because of one impulsive act. You wonder what's running through his head: guilt for the killing, fear of Pharaoh's men, or maybe relief to be free of Egypt's lies. Scholars still argue whether Moses fled immediately or lingered, hoping to hide his crime. Did he sneak out at dawn, or was he already being hunted? You're not sure, but his hurried steps tell you he's not taking chances. A quirky tidbit: Midianites. Where he's headed, we're known for trading incense and gold, but their camels were the real MVPs, carrying goods across deserts. Picture Moses, a city boy, dodging camel spit soon. You smirk, imagining him wrinkling his nose. But for now, he's alone, the horizon endless. You hear his stomach growl, royal feasts are long gone. You're thirsty, too, the sand gritty between your toes. Then, a strange event from the Bible. Moses reaches a well in Midian. You see it, a stone-ringed oasis, where women are drawing water for their flocks. Moses sits, exhausted, his hands still caked with dust. You watch as 7 sisters, daughters of a priest named Jethro, herd their sheep. They're chatting, laughing, until some rowdy shepherds muscle in, trying to shove them aside. You feel Moses tense. He's done with bullies. He stands, strides over, and scatters the shepherds like flies. You're impressed. The guy's got guts, even on the run. The sisters, surprised, thank him, their eyes curious. 1. Zipporah lingers, her gaze bold. You're thinking, is this a meet cute in the middle of nowhere? A joke pops up. What do you call a fugitive who plays hero? A desert night. You chuckle, but the moment's sweet. You're by the well now, the air cooling as evening settles. Jethro invites Moses to his tent, and you follow. Smelling roasted lamb and flatbread, Moses eats, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Zipporah watches him, her smile subtle. You're wondering if he's told them his story, or if he's keeping Egypt buried, like that overseer in the sand. The stars are out, brighter than Thebes' torches, and you feel a strange peace, like God's guiding this lost prince, that crocodile dung sunscreen from the Nile a lifetime ago. You're sinking into Midian's quiet, Moses' new chapter unfolding, and your eyelids are heavy, ready for what's next. You're deep in Midian now, the desert's vastness stretching around you like a warm blanket. The well's behind you, its cool stone, a fading memory as you sit in Jethro's tent, the air rich with wool and wood smoke. Moses is no longer just a fugitive. He's a guest, maybe even family. His eyes softer, but still haunted. You're watching him settle into this new life. A Hebrew-Egyptian prince turned shepherd, about to face something wilder than Pharaoh's court, a moment that'll change everything. The stars outside wink, and you're ready to see what's coming, aren't you? You're out in the fields, trailing Moses as he herds Jethro's sheep. It's been years since he arrived, and he's married Zipporah now. Her sharp wit, a match for his quiet intensity. You see him, staff in hand, guiding bleeding goats across rocky slopes. His linen's gone. He's in rough wool, his hands calloused from work, not palace pens. You wonder if he misses Thebes' feasts, or if Midian's simplicity suits him. Scholars still argue whether Moses was content here or restless, waiting for a sign from God. Did he pray under these stars, or had Egypt's gods left him skeptical? A quirky tidbit Midianites used frankincense in rituals, its smoky scent believed to please their deities. Imagine Moses sniffing it at Jethro's altar, wondering if his God smells different. You smile, picturing him sneezing mid-prayer. But the day's routine shifts as he leads the flock toward Horeb, the mountain of God. You feel the air change, sharper, like a whisper of something big. Then, the strange event from the Bible. A bush bursts into flame, but doesn't burn. You're with Moses, your sandals crunching on gravel. As he spots it, the fire dances, orange and gold, yet the leaves stay green. You're thinking, that's not normal. Moses approaches, cautious, his staff tapping the ground. You hear a voice, God's voice rumbling from the bush, calling his name. Your skin prickles. This isn't Jethro's frankincense vibes. Take off your sandals, God says. This is holy ground. Moses obeys, barefoot now, his face a mix of awe and fear. You're close, feeling the heat but no scorch. God tells him he's chosen to free the Hebrews from Egypt. You're like, Moses, you sure about this? A joke slips in. What do you call a shepherd picked by a fiery shrub? A reluctant prophet. You grin, but the moment's heavy. You watch Moses argue, his voice shaky. He's no speaker, he says. Pharaoh won't listen. God insists, promising signs and strength. You're struck by the intimacy God knows Moses doubts. His past, that buried overseer. The desert's quiet, save for the crackling bush and bleating sheep. You're wondering how Moses feels, tapped for a mission he didn't ask for. That Nile basket, the palace, the murder, all led here. You're sinking into the scene. The fire's glow fading as your eyelids droop. Midian's calm, but Moses' world just caught fire, and you're hooked, drifting towards sleep. You're still in Midian's rugged hills, the burning bushes glow lingering in your mind like a dream you can't shake. The air's cooler now, tinged with sage and dust. As you stand near Moses, his bare feet on holy ground, he's just heard God's voice, a divine job offer to free the Hebrews, and he's not exactly thrilled. You're watching him grapple with this cosmic curveball, his staff clutched tight, eyes wide. The desert's quiet, but his heart's pounding loud enough for both of you. Let's see how he seals this deal with God, shall we? You're close to the bush. Its flames gone, but the air still humming with power. Moses is arguing, his voice low, almost pleading. He's no leader. He stammers. He's a fugitive, not a hero. You feel his doubt, heavy as the sand under your toes. Scholars still argue whether Moses' reluctance was humility or fear. Did he dread facing Pharaoh, or was he just done with Egypt's drama? You're not sure, but his hesitation's raw, human. You're thinking, mate. You're arguing with a talking bush. Maybe just go with it. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians carried staffs as status symbols, but shepherds like Moses used them for practical stuff, like fending off wolves. Picture him gripping that stick, half ready to bolt. You chuckle, imagining him waving it at God like, pick someone else. But then comes the strange event from the Bible. God tells Moses to throw his staff down. You watch, breath held. As he does, it hits the dirt and bam, turns into a writhing serpent. You jump back, heart racing. Moses does, too, scrambling away like he's seen a Nile croc. You're thinking, okay, that's a power move. God tells him to grab the snake by the tail. You're like, bad idea, buddy. But Moses, trembling, obeys, and it's a staff again. You exhale, impressed. God's proving a point. Moses won't do this alone. You see his face shift, still scared, but listening. God gives 2 more signs. Moses' hand turns leprous, then heals. Water from the Nile will become blood. You're struck by the symbolism. That river from his basket days, now a tool of judgment. A joke pops up. What do you call a shepherd with a snake stick? A wizard in training? You smirk, but the moment's intense. You're with Moses as he kneels. The desert vast around him. God says Aaron, his brother, will help speak. You wonder if Moses even remembers Aaron after all these years. The bush is silent now, just a shrub again, but you feel its weight. Moses nods, resigned but resolute. You're sinking into the scene, the stars above Midian bright as ever, that crocodile dung sunscreen from Egypt. A distant joke. You're hooked. The story pulling you deeper, your eyelids heavy as Moses stands, staff in hand, ready to face his past. You're leaving Midian's rocky hills behind, the burning bush, a fading ember in your memory. The desert stretches wide, but you're on the move, trudging alongside Moses as he heads back to Egypt. His staff taps the ground. His new wife Zipporah and their young son Gershom at his side. The air's dry, sharp with anticipation, and you feel the weight of his mission confront Pharaoh. Free the Hebrews. Trust a God he's only just met. It's a long road, and you're wondering if he's ready or if you'd be. Let's walk with him and find out. You're on a dusty trail. The sun dipping low, painting the sand gold. Moses is quieter than usual, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Zipporah hums softly, Gershom tugging at her hand. You sense Moses' mind churning Egypt's palaces. That buried overseer, the serpent staff, all swirling in his head. Scholars still argue whether Moses felt empowered or terrified, returning to the land that wanted him dead. Was he banking on God's promise or dreading Pharaoh's wrath? You're not sure. but his steady pace tells you he's committed, even if his heart's racing. A quirky tidbit: desert travelers like Moses carried water in goatskin bags, which often leaked, making every oasis a party. Picture him rationing sips, wishing for Nile-side luxury. You smile, imagining him muttering about shoddy craftsmanship. But the journey's no joke, bandits. Heat and doubt are real threats. You're thinking about that burning bush, how it changed everything. Then comes the strange event from the Bible. God meets Moses on the road, but not for a pep talk. You're stunned as the text says God seeks to kill him. You're like, wait, what? It's vague, but Zipporah acts fast, circumcising Gershom with a flint knife and touching Moses' feet with the blood, saying, "You're a bridegroom of blood to me." You're reeling. The scene raw and weird. Was this about Moses' failure to circumcise his son? A covenant oversight. You see Zipporah's fierce resolve, her hand steady despite the chaos. God relents, and Moses breathes again. You're thinking, talk about a divine close call. A joke slips in what do you call a prophet who angers God on day one? A work in progress. You chuckle, but the moment's tense. You wonder if Moses questions his calling now, or if Zipporah's quick thinking strengthens his trust. You're back on the trail. The stars emerging. Moses walks closer to Zipporah. Their bond tighter after that scare. You feel the desert's vastness, but also a strange calm, like God's watching. Flaws and all. That Nile basket, the palace murder, the fiery bush, they're all threads in this journey. You're sinking deeper, the sand's warmth fading as your eyelids droop. Moses is nearing Egypt, and you're right there, hooked, ready for what's next in this wild, sleepy tale. You're nearing Egypt now. The desert's endless dunes giving way to greener patches where the Nile's influence creeps in. You're walking with Moses, his staff a steady rhythm against the earth. Zipporah and Gershom trailing behind. That bizarre roadside encounter with God's wrath is still fresh, like a bad dream you can't quite shake. Moses' face is set, though, his eyes fixed on the horizon where Thebes waits. You're about to meet someone crucial, his brother Aaron, and see how two strangers become God's tag team. The air's thick with river scent, and you're ready to dive back in, aren't you? You're on a scrubby plain, the Nile's distant glitter just visible. Moses has sent Zipporah and Gershom to safety, maybe with Jethro. So it's just him now, a lone figure with a divine mission. You feel his solitude, heavy as the pack on his back. Scholars still argue whether Moses and Aaron had met before this moment. Were they close as kids, or did years in Egypt and Midian make them strangers? You're not sure, but you sense Moses' nerves reuniting with family while dodging Pharaoh's bounty hunters is no picnic. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians used honey as an antibiotic, slathering it on wounds. Picture Moses dabbing some on a scraped knee from the trail, wincing but grateful. You smirk, imagining him licking the excess off his fingers. But the moment shifts as you spot a figure approaching Aaron, sent by God to meet his brother. Here's the strange event from the Bible they embrace in the wilderness. No hesitation, like they've always known each other. You're moved, watching them hug under a scraggly acacia tree, their voices low, catching up on decades apart. Aaron's a talker, his hands animated, while Moses listens, nodding slowly. You're close, catching their words. Aaron's been with the Hebrews, feeling their pain under Pharaoh's whips. Moses shares the burning bush, the serpent staff, God's wild plan. You see Aaron's eyes widen, but he's all in no doubts, no arguments. You're thinking, this guy's the hype man Moses needs. A joke pops up. What do you call brothers who team up to face a king? A divine duo with terrible odds. You grin. But their bond feels solid, like the Nile's steady flow. You follow as they head toward Egypt, plotting their next move. Aaron will speak for Moses, whose stammer makes him dread crowds. You wonder how they'll convince the Hebrews, let alone Pharaoh. The desert's fading behind you, the city's hum growing louder. You're sinking into the story. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank a faint memory. Moses and Aaron are a team now. And you're hooked. The tension pulling you deeper as your eyelids grow heavy. Ready for the showdown ahead. You're in Egypt again. The Nile's muddy scent wrapping around you as Thebes' towering walls loom ahead. You're with Moses and Aaron, two brothers on a mission from God, their sandals kicking up dust as they approach the city. The air buzzes with market chatter and the clatter of chariots, but there's a heavier weight Pharaoh's palace awaits, and Moses is about to demand the impossible freedom for the Hebrews. You're feeling the stakes, aren't you? Let's slip into the lion's den and see how this first showdown plays out. You're weaving through Thebes' crowded streets, past vendors hawking barley beer and linen. Moses is tense, his staff gripped tight, while Aaron's eyes dart, taking it all in. You wonder if Moses feels like a ghost here, back where he was a prince and a fugitive. Scholars still argue whether Pharaoh knew Moses was the same man who killed that overseer years ago. Is he walking into a trap? Or does his royal past give him a pass? You're not sure, but the palace's golden gates are close, and your pulse is racing. A quirky tidbit: Egyptian royals ate garlic to ward off evil spirits. Picture Pharaoh popping a clove before this meeting, thinking it'll protect him from trouble. You chuckle, imagining his breath as Moses steps up. But here's the strange event from the Bible. Moses and Aaron stride into the throne room, facing Pharaoh on his gilded seat. You're there, the air thick with incense, courtiers whispering behind fans. Aaron speaks, voice steady, saying God demands, "Let my people go to worship in the wilderness." Pharaoh laughs, his eyes cold, dismissing them as madmen stirring up slaves. You're stunned by his arrogance, But you see Moses' face calm, almost too calm. He throws down his staff, and it writhes into a serpent. Just like in Midian, you gasp, the court gasps, but Pharaoh's magicians smirk, tossing their own staffs, which also become snakes. You're thinking, okay, game on. But Moses' serpent swallows theirs, a divine flex. Pharaoh doesn't flinch, though, waving them out. A joke slips in. What do you call a king who ignores a snake off? A guy with a death wish. You smirk, but the tension's thick. You're out sick now, following Moses and Aaron as they regroup by the Nile. They're shaken, but not surprised. God warned them Pharaoh's heart would harden. You feel the river's pull. That same water from Moses' basket days now, a stage for what's next. You're sinking deeper, the city's hum fading as your eyelids droop. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank feels like another life. The brothers are ready to up the ante, and you're hooked, drifting towards sleep, eager for the chaos to come. You're back by the Nile, its waters glinting under a relentless sun, the air thick with reeds and tension. Moses and Aaron stand near you, their faces set after Pharaoh's smug dismissal in the palace. You're still reeling from that serpent staff showdown, but Pharaoh's not budging. And God's about to turn up the heat. You're about to see the Hebrews' lives get harder before they get better. And trust me, it's as heavy as a mud brick in your hands. Let's dive into this next chapter of Egypt's unraveling, shall we? You're trailing Moses and Aaron as they walk from the palace. The city's bustle, a stark contrast to their grim mood. The Hebrews are still enslaved, and Pharaoh's laughter echoes in your ears. You wonder how Moses feels, returning to Egypt only to be brushed off like a pesky fly. Scholars still argue whether Moses expected Pharaoh's defiance or hoped for a quick win. Did he trust God's plan? Or was he second-guessing that burning bush? You're not sure. But Aaron's muttering about the elders, and Moses nods, gripping his staff like it's his lifeline. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians used coal eyeliner to protect their eyes from sun glare. Picture an overseer squinting through smudged coal, barking at slaves. You smirk, but the scene shifts to a grim reality. Here's the strange event from the Bible. Pharaoh, furious at Moses' demands, orders the Hebrews to make bricks without straw. You're at a work site now, the air choking with dust. Slaves mix mud and clay, their hands bleeding, but without straw. The bricks crumble. Overseers crack whips, demanding the same quota. You see a Hebrew man collapse, his wife pleading, and you feel Moses' guilt. He stirred this hornet's nest. You're close to the workers, their groans mixing with the Nile's hum. Moses and Aaron meet with Hebrew elders, who are livid, blaming them for this new cruelty. You catch Moses' eyes, shadowed with doubt, but Aaron rallies them, recounting God's promise. You're thinking, tough crowd. Guys, a joke pops up. What do you call slaves told to work harder after a failed rebellion? The unluckiest crew in Thebes. You wince, but it's true. The elders disperse, some muttering curses, others praying. You wonder if Moses feels like that fugitive again, out of his depth. You're back by the river now, the sun dipping low. Moses kneels, praying, his voice barely audible. You feel the weight of his mission, the Nile's flow, a reminder of his basket days. Now so far off, that crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank, a faint memory in this mess. You're sinking into the story, the workers' cries fading as your eyelids grow heavy. Moses is gearing up for God's next move, and you're hooked, ready for the Nile to turn wild. You're standing by the Nile again, its waters deceptively calm, reflecting a sky bruised with dawn's first light. Moses and Aaron are beside you, their faces resolute after the Hebrews' anger and Pharaoh's cruel brick without straw decree. You're still feeling the sting of that work site, the slave's despair heavy in your chest. But God's not done with Egypt, and you're about to see the Nile lifeblood of this land turn into something straight out of a nightmare. The air's thick with anticipation, and you're ready to watch this divine drama unfold, aren't you? You're ankle deep in mud, the river's edge buzzing with flies. Moses grips his staff, Aaron at his side, both staring at the water that once cradled Moses' basket. You wonder if he's thinking of that day, or if his mind's locked on God's command. Scholars still argue whether Moses believed these plagues would sway Pharaoh or just harden his heart further. Was this a test of faith for Moses, or a spectacle for Egypt? You're not sure, but the Nile's about to become a stage, and you've got front row seats. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians revered the Nile as a god, Hapi, offering it beer and hymns. Picture priests pouring libations yesterday, clueless about today's chaos. You smirk, imagining their shock soon. Here's the strange event from the Bible. Moses raises his staff, and the Nile turns to blood. You watch, jaw-dropping, as the water churns crimson, thick and sluggish. Fish float belly up, their silver scales dulled. The stench hits you rotten, metallic, like a slaughterhouse. You're thinking, this is no trick. Egyptians on the bank scream, dropping their nets, while Moses stands calm, Aaron murmuring prayers. You're wading through the chaos, following Moses as he surveys the damage. Boats stall, their oars stuck in the gory sludge. Villagers dig frantically for clean water, their jars useless. You hear a woman wail, clutching a child, and you feel the weight of God's judgment. Pharaoh's magicians try to mimic the miracle, turning small pots red, but it's a weak flex. Nothing matches this scale. A joke slips, and what do you call a king who ignores a bloody river? A guy fishing for trouble? You chuckle, but the scene's grim. You're back with Moses now, the Nile's red tide lapping at your feet. He's praying, eyes on the sky, while Aaron rallies nearby Hebrews, whispering of God's power. You wonder if the slaves feel hope or just fear. Their brick quotas still crushing them. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank feels like a fairy tale now. You're sinking deeper. The bloodied waters ripple fading as your eyelids droop. Egypt's reeling, and you're hooked, ready for the next plague to shake this stubborn land. You're still by the Nile, its crimson waters now a fading horror, the stench of blood lingering like a bad memory. The sun's high, baking the mud under your feet, and you're with Moses and Aaron, their eyes scanning the horizon for Pharaoh's next move. Egypt's reeling, but the king's heart is stone, and God's got more in store. You're about to see a plague that's less gory, but way more annoying. And trust me, it's as absurd as finding a frog in your sandal. Let's hop into this next chapter, shall we? You're on a village path, the Nile's banks bustling with Egyptians digging for clean water. Their faces grim. Moses and Aaron stand nearby, staff in hand, whispering prayers. You wonder if Moses feels the weight of these plagues, each one a step deeper into God's plan. Scholars still argue whether the plagues were meant to humble Pharaoh or prove God's supremacy over Egypt's gods. Was this frog invasion a jab at Hued, their frog-headed fertility deity? You're not sure, but the air's humming, and something's coming. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians slept on woven reed mats, often infested with bugs. Picture a noble waking up scratching, unaware of the amphibian chaos about to hit. You grin, imagining their complaints. Then comes the strange event from the Bible. Aaron stretches his staff over the Nile, and frogs pour out. You're stunned as they emerge, hundreds, thousands green, slimy, hopping everywhere. They're in streets, kitchens, even beds, croaking like an out-of-tune choir. You step carefully, dodging a frog that leaps across your path, and you hear an Egyptian woman shriek as one lands in her bread dough. You're trailing Moses through the chaos, the ground squishing underfoot. Villagers swat at frogs. Kids giggle, chasing them, but the novelty's wearing thin. You see a priest slip on a frog, his coal-smeared face furious, and you stifle a laugh. Pharaoh's magicians summon their own frogs because that helps, but they can't stop the invasion. You're thinking, this is God's prank, and it's working. A joke pops up. What do you call a palace full of frogs, a royal ribbit fest? You chuckle, but the Egyptians aren't amused. Their sacred order crumbling. You're back with Moses and Aaron, watching from a rise as the frog plague spreads. Pharaoh summons them, grudgingly promising to let the Hebrews go if the frogs vanish. Moses prays, and the frogs die off, piling in heaps that stink worse than the bloody Nile. You wrinkle your nose, feeling Egypt's exhaustion. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank. A distant joke in this slimy mess. You're sinking deeper. The croaks fading as your eyelids grow heavy. Pharaoh's reneging already, and you're hooked. Ready for the next divine jab to shake this stubborn land. You're still in Egypt. The frog carcasses swept into reeking piles. The Nile's banks buzzing with flies drawn to the rot. You're standing with Moses and Aaron, their faces weary but resolute, the sun scorching overhead. Pharaoh's broken his promise to free the Hebrews, and you're feeling the frustration. Like sand stuck in your sandals. God's not done, though. And the next plagues are about to make frogs look like a warm-up. You're ready to swat through this next chapter, aren't you? Let's see Egypt squirm. You're on a dusty street in Thebes, the air thick with the hum of daily life vendors shouting, donkeys braying. Moses and Aaron are nearby, staff raised, eyes on the sky. You wonder if they're tired of Pharaoh's games or fueled by God's relentless plan. Scholars still argue whether these plagues targeted specific Egyptian gods, like Khepri, linked to insects. Were gnats and flies a divine middle finger to Egypt's sacred beetles? You're not sure, but the ground's about to get itchy. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians wore amulets shaped like scarabs for luck. Picture a noble clutching one now, clueless about the bug storm coming. You smirk, imagining their panic. Here's the strange event from the Bible. Aaron strikes the dust, and it turns into gnats, swarming everywhere. You're swatting at them, tiny specks crawling on your skin, in your hair, your eyes. Egyptians scream, scratching frantically, while Hebrews, untouched, watch in awe. Then, days later, Moses calls down flies big, buzzing ones flooding homes, temples, even Pharaoh's palace. You're dodging them. The air, a droning haze. You're trailing Moses through the chaos. Flies smacking your face. Priests abandon their altars. Magicians admit defeat, saying, "This is the finger of God." You're impressed, but not surprised. Pharaoh's team is outclassed. You see a woman sweep flies from her bread, cursing, and you feel Egypt's unraveling. A joke pops up. What do you call a king covered in gnats? An itch he can't scratch. You chuckle, but the mood's tense. Pharaoh summons Moses, offering a deal-worship God here, not in the wilderness. Moses refuses, knowing it's a trap. You're back by the Nile now. Its waters clearer, but no comfort. Moses prays, and the flies vanish, leaving Egypt rattled. Pharaoh hardens his heart again, and you're thinking, this guy's stubborn as a pyramid. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank feels like a fairy tale in this buggy nightmare. You're sinking deeper, the buzzing fading as your eyelids droop. Egypt's on the ropes, and you're hooked, ready for the next plague to hit this defiant land. You're standing on the outskirts of Thebes, the Nile's faint ripple barely audible over the lowing of cattle in nearby fields. The gnats and flies are gone. They're buzzing, a bad memory. But Egypt's still reeling. And you're with Moses and Aaron, their faces etched with determination. Pharaoh's defiance is like a brick wall. And God's about to hit harder, targeting something Egyptians hold dear. You're feeling the tension, like a storm brewing over the desert. Let's walk through this next plague and see Egypt's pride take a beating. Shall we? You're near a grazing field, the air heavy with dust and animal musk. Moses and Aaron stand on a rise, staff raised, eyes fixed on the herd's cows, goats, camels that sustain Egypt's wealth. You wonder if Moses feels the weight of these escalating plagues, each one a louder shout from God. Scholars still argue whether this plague was aimed at Hathor, Egypt's cow goddess, a divine slap to their sacred livestock. Was it personal for Pharaoh, or just another step in God's plan? You're not sure, but the fields feel too quiet, like nature's holding its breath. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians mummified prized bulls, burying them with fanfare. Picture a farmer stroking his bull's flank this morning, oblivious to the doom coming. You smirk, imagining his shock soon. Here's the strange event from the Bible. Moses announces God's plague. And every Egyptian animal, cattle, sheep, horses drops dead. You're stunned, watching cows collapse mid-graze, their bodies littering the fields. The stench hits fast, sour and thick. Hebrews' livestock, untouched, bleat calmly, a stark contrast. You're thinking, this is no coincidence. You're trailing Moses through the chaos. Farmers wailing as they pile carcasses. Market stall. Milk jars sit empty. And nobles panic. No meat. No sacrifices. You see a priest kick a dead goat, cursing. And you feel Egypt's desperation. Pharaoh's scouts report the Hebrews' healthy flocks, but he shrugs, unmoved. You're like, buddy, your economy's tanking. A joke pops up. What do you call a king who loses all his cows? A guy with no stake in the game. You chuckle, but the loss is brutal. The fields, a graveyard. You're back with Moses and Aaron. The Niles hum a distant comfort. They're praying, heads bowed, while Egyptians mourn their herds. You wonder if the Hebrews feel hope now, seeing God's power, or if brick quotas still crush their spirits. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank, a faint echo in this grim scene. You're sinking deeper, the lowing silenced as your eyelids droop. Pharaoh's digging in, and you're hooked, ready for the next blow to shake this stubborn land. You're in Thebes, the air heavy with the stench of dead livestock. The fields eerily silent after the last plague's devastation. You're standing with Moses and Aaron, their robes dusted from the road, their eyes fixed on the city's heart, Pharaoh's palace. Egypt's pride is crumbling, but Pharaoh's still playing hardball, and God's about to unleash a 1-2 punch of plagues that'll make the cattle loss feel like a warm-up. You're feeling the heat, both from the sun and the tension, aren't you? Let's dive into this next wave of divine chaos. You're on a street near the Nile. Its waters glinting despite the gloom. Moses and Aaron are nearby, staff raised, their faces calm but resolute. You wonder if Moses is numb to Pharaoh's stubbornness or burning with purpose. Scholars still argue whether these plagues were timed to break Egypt's spirit or mock its gods, like Sekhmet, tied to healing and destruction. Were boils and hail a direct challenge to her power? You're not sure, but the air feels charged, like a storm's rolling in. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians used aloe to soothe burns, a rare plant they guarded jealously. Picture a noble hoarding his stash, clueless about the skin-deep misery coming. You smirk. But here's the strange event from the Bible. Moses tosses dust into the air, and boils erupt on every Egyptian nobles, priests, even Pharaoh. You wince, watching people scratch frantically, their skin red and blistered. Hebrews remain untouched, their calm a stark contrast. Then, Moses warns of hail, and you see dark clouds gather, unnatural and heavy. Fire-laced hailstones crash down, smashing crops, roofs, and hopes. You're dodging them, heart racing, as Egyptians scream, fleeing for cover. You're trailing Moses through the wreckage. Streets littered with shattered pottery and bruised egos. The hail stops, but fields are ruined, flax and barley gone. You hear a farmer curse, his hands blistered, and you feel Egypt's despair. Pharaoh summons Moses, admitting sin but reneging once the sky clears. A joke pops up. What do you call a king who cries wolf during hail? A soggy liar. You chuckle. But the betrayal stings. You're thinking, this guy's never learning. You're back by the Nile, its banks muddy from the storm. Moses prays, Aaron at his side, while Egyptians nurse their wounds. You wonder if the Hebrews are whispering of freedom now, or if the brick kilns still loom large. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank, a cruel irony against these boils. You're sinking deeper, the thunder's echo fading as your eyelids droop. Egypt's battered, and you're hooked, ready for the next plague to shake this defiant land. You're trudging through Thebes' battered streets, the air damp from the recent hail, the ground strewn with broken barley stalks and chunks of ice now melting under the sun. You're with Moses and Aaron, their faces grim but steady. The Nile's faint hum, a backdrop to Egypt's growing despair. Pharaoh's latest promise to free the Hebrews was another lie, and God's about to send a plague that'll chew through what little Egypt has left. You're feeling the weight of this relentless cycle, aren't you? Let's watch the land get devoured, one crunch at a time, You're on the city's edge, fields stretching before you, their edges ragged from the hail's wrath. Moses and Aaron stand tall, staff raised, eyes on the horizon where the desert meets the sky. You wonder if Moses is exhausted by Pharaoh's games or fueled by the Hebrews' faint hope. Scholars still argue whether this plague targeted Egypt's agricultural gods, like Osiris, tied to fertility. Were locusts a final blow to their sacred harvests? You're not sure, but the air is buzzing, and it's not just flies this time. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians ate locusts in lean times, roasting them with salt. Picture a farmer eyeing his ruined crops, thinking, "At least I'll get a snack." You smirk, but the mood shifts fast. Here's the strange event from the Bible. Moses stretches his staff, and a wind brings locusts, millions of them, a chittering cloud darkening the sky. You're stunned, watching them descend, their wings a deafening hum. They strip fields bare, devouring wheat, spelt, even tree bark. You hear the crunch, see leaves vanish, and feel Egypt's heart sink. Houses fill with the pests, crawling into jars. Beds everywhere. You're trailing Moses through the chaos, locusts smacking your face. Farmers swing nets uselessly. Priests chant to no avail. And nobles flee to the palace, their linen crusted with bug guts. You see a child try to shoo a locust, only for 10 more to land, and you wince. Pharaoh's magicians are silent now, their tricks useless. He summons Moses, begging for relief, promising freedom again. You're thinking, fool me once, right? A joke pops up. What do you call a king buried in bugs? A crunchy tyrant. You chuckle, but the desperation's palpable. You're back by the Nile, its banks untouched, but no comfort, Moses prays, and a west wind sweeps the locusts away, leaving stripped fields and empty granaries. Pharaoh reneges, as expected, and you're like, this guy's a broken record. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank, a faint memory in this barren mess. You're sinking deeper, the locusts' hum fading as your eyelids droop. Egypt's starving, and you're hooked, ready for the next plague to darken this stubborn land. You're in Thebes, the air heavy with the silence of stripped fields, the locusts' devastation, a fresh wound in Egypt's pride. You're standing with Moses and Aaron, their robes dusted with the grit of a land pushed to its knees. The Nile's nearby, its waters mocking the barrenness around you, and Pharaoh's still clinging to his throne like a stubborn weed. God's next plague is about to plunge Egypt into something eerie. And you're feeling the chill already, aren't you? Let's step into the shadows and see what happens when the sun vanishes. You're on a market street, usually loud with haggling, but now it's hushed. Vendors packing up early, their faces tight with fear. Moses and Aaron are close, staff raised, their eyes on the sky. where clouds seem to thicken unnaturally. You wonder if Moses is haunted by the Hebrews' suffering or steeled by God's unyielding plan. Scholars still argue whether this darkness was a jab at Ra, Egypt's sun god, a direct challenge to Pharaoh's divine claims. Was it a sandstorm, an eclipse, or something stranger? You're not sure, but the light's fading fast. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians lit oil lamps with linen wicks to ward off night's dangers. Picture a priest fumbling with one now, clueless about the blackout coming. You smirk, but the mood's heavy. Here's the strange event from the Bible. Moses lifts his hand, and a thick darkness falls, so dense you can't see your own fingers. You're stumbling, disoriented, as Egyptians freeze, afraid to move. It's not just night, it's a suffocating void, lasting 3 days. Hebrew homes glow softly, untouched, their lamps a beacon. You're thinking, this is God's checkmate. You're trailing Moses through the pitch-black streets, his steps sure, guided by faith or instinct. Egyptians huddle in homes, their lamps useless, voices trembling with prayers to Ra. You hear a noble curse, tripping over a jar, and you stifle a laugh. Even the mighty are helpless now. Pharaoh summons Moses, his voice strained through messengers, offering to let the Hebrews go, but keep their flocks. Moses refuses. Unwavering, a joke pops up. What do you call a king blind to reason? A guy lost in the dark. You chuckle, but the fear's palpable. Egypt paralyzed. You're back by the Nile, its waters invisible in the gloom. Moses prays, Aaron silent, while Egyptians whisper of curses. You wonder if the Hebrews are praying for freedom now, or bracing for Pharaoh's next betrayal. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank, a cruel joke when no sun shines. You're sinking deeper, the darkness wrapping you as your eyelids droop. Egypt's terrified, and you're hooked, ready for the final plague to break this defiant land. You're in Thebes. The oppressive darkness lifted, leaving Egypt shaken, its people squinting under a sun that feels too bright after 3 days of blindness. You're with Moses and Aaron, standing near the Nile, its waters steady, but no comfort to a land on the brink. Pharaoh's defiance is a cracked dam, and God's final plague is coming, one that'll cut deeper than locusts or boils. You're feeling the weight, like a stone in your chest, aren't you? Let's step into this solemn moment and see the Hebrews prepare for salvation. You're in a Hebrew slum, mud brick homes cramped and smoky, the air thick with tension. Moses and Aaron gather elders, their voices low but firm, relaying God's instructions. You wonder if Moses feels the gravity of this moment. Freedom's close, but it comes at a terrible cost. Scholars still argue whether the Passover was a new ritual or rooted in older nomadic rites. Was it a unique act of faith, or did it echo ancient blood sacrifices? You're not sure, but the Hebrews' eyes are wide. their hands busy with preparations. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians used hyssop, a bitter herb, to purify temples. Now, Hebrews dip it in blood. A twist of irony. Picture a mother clutching hyssop, her fingers trembling as she follows orders. You smile faintly. But here's the strange event from the Bible. God commands each household to slaughter a lamb, smear its blood on their door frames, and eat a hurried meal: unleavened bread, bitter herbs, sandals on. You're watching a family paint their lintel, the blood dripping red against mud walls. The lamb roasts, its scent mixing with fear. You're thinking, this is no ordinary dinner. You're moving through the slum, seeing Hebrews obey in hushed urgency. Children ask why, and parents whisper of God's angel passing over blood-marked homes. Egyptians, unaware, carry on, their lamps lit as usual. You feel the divide: hope in one camp, oblivion in the other. Pharaoh's offer to let the Hebrews go without livestock was rejected, and now he's silent. Blind to the storm, a joke pops up. What do you call a king who ignores divine ultimatums? A guy about to lose big. You wince, knowing what's coming. You're back with Moses, his face etched with resolve as he checks a family's door. The Nile's hum is faint, a reminder of that basket long ago. You wonder if the Hebrews trust this blood ritual, or if fear grips them as tightly as their Egyptian chains. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank, a distant memory in this sacred, tense night. You're sinking deeper, the firelight's glow fading as your eyelids droop. Egypt's fate is sealed, and you're hooked, ready for the midnight that changes everything. You're still in Thebes, the night deep and heavy, the air thick with the scent of roasted lamb and bitter herbs from Hebrew homes. The Nile's faint ripple is the only sound breaking the eerie quiet. As you stand near Moses and Aaron, their eyes fixed on the starlit sky, the Passover preparations are done. Door frames painted with blood, and Egypt sleeps, unaware of the divine judgment about to strike. You're feeling the weight of this moment like a stone in your chest, aren't you? Let's walk through the midnight that changes everything. You're slipping through Hebrew quarters, where families huddle inside, eating hurriedly, sandals on, staffs in hand. The blood on their doorposts glistens, a stark contrast to the unmarked Egyptian homes nearby. You wonder if Moses is praying for strength or wrestling with the horror of what's coming. Scholars still argue whether this plague was God's ultimate rebuke to Pharaoh's claim as a god, targeting his divine lineage. Was the death of the firstborn a mirror to Egypt's slaughter of Hebrew sons? You're not sure, but the silence feels alive, charged with purpose. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians placed amulets on children to ward off spirits. Picture a mother tucking one under her son's pillow tonight. Oblivious to its uselessness, you wince. the irony sharp. Here's the strange event from the Bible at midnight. God's angel passes through Egypt, and every firstborn human and animal dies. You're frozen, hearing wails erupt across the city, a chorus of grief that chills your bones. In Pharaoh's palace, his heir lies still. In noble homes, sons collapse. In stables, calves slump. Hebrew homes, marked by blood, are spared. Their silence a stark contrast. You're moving through the chaos, the air thick with sobs and panic. Egyptians stumble into streets, clutching their dead, while Hebrews remain indoors, awestruck. You see a woman cradle her son, her screams raw, and you feel Egypt's heart break. Moses and Aaron are near the Nile, their faces somber, knowing this was God's final blow. Pharaoh summons them, his voice broken, ordering the Hebrews to leave. You're thinking, too late. Pal, a joke pops up. What do you call a king who loses his heir? A ruler with no rule left. You chuckle, but it's hollow, the grief overwhelming. You're back by the river, its waters calm, mocking Egypt's turmoil. The Hebrews prepare to flee, their faith in Moses solidified. You wonder if they're relieved or terrified. Freedom so sudden after years of whips. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank. A cruel memory in this night of loss. You're sinking deeper, the wails fading as your eyelids droop. Egypt's shattered, and you're hooked, ready for the exodus to begin. You're in the chaos of Thebes at dawn, the air thick with grief and the sharp tang of fear. The Nile's banks are crowded with Hebrews, their bundles hastily packed, faces a mix of awe and urgency. You're with Moses and Aaron, leading this ragtag exodus, their staffs cutting through the dust as Pharaoh's order to leave echoes in your ears. Egypt's firstborn are gone, and the king's finally cracked. But you're sensing trouble's not done. You're ready to flee with the Hebrews, aren't you? Let's hit the road and see where this Red Sea path leads. You're weaving through the throng, past women balancing bread dough on their heads, men herding bleeding goats. Moses is ahead, his voice steady, urging speed, while Aaron rallies stragglers. You wonder if Moses feels the weight of leading thousands, or if God's promise keeps him grounded. Scholars still argue whether Pharaoh's change of heart was immediate or if he stewed before chasing them. Did he regret his weakness, or was pride always going to win? You're not sure, but the Hebrews' hurried steps tell you time's short. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians lent the Hebrews gold and silver as they left, maybe out of fear or guilt. Picture a noble tossing a bracelet to a slave. Eyes averted, you smirk, imagining the Hebrews' shock at this sudden wealth. Here's the strange event from the Bible. God leads the Hebrews toward the Red Sea, a pillar of cloud by day, fire by night, guiding their path. You're awestruck. watching the cloud swirl ahead, its edges glowing, keeping you on course. The sea's close now, its salty breeze sharp, but you hear hoofbeats Pharaoh's chariots. Closing in, you're at the water's edge, the Red Sea vast, waves crashing. The Hebrews panic, trapped between sea and army, shouting at Moses for leading them to death. You feel their fear, your own pulse racing as chariots gleam in the distance. Moses raises his staff, trusting God. And you're thinking, this better work. A joke pops up. What do you call a prophet with an ocean problem? A guy praying for dry land. You chuckle, but it's tense. The cloud shifts, blocking Pharaoh's men, and you sense something massive coming. You're with Moses. The sea's roar deafening, the Hebrews huddle, kids clinging to parents, while Aaron prays. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank, a distant memory in this desperate moment. You're sinking deeper, the hoofbeats fading as your eyelids droop. The Red Sea's about to part, and you're hooked, ready for God's next miracle to save this fleeing nation. You're at the Red Sea's edge, the salty spray stinging your face, the roar of waves drowning out the distant clatter of Pharaoh's chariots. You're with Moses and Aaron. The Hebrews press behind you, their panic palpable as the pillar of cloud holds back the Egyptian army. The sea's a wall of water, no way through, and Moses' staff is raised, his eyes locked on the horizon. You're feeling the impossible weight of this moment, aren't you? Let's watch the waters part and see how freedom tastes on the other side. You're standing in the sand. The crowd's murmurs, a mix of fear and hope. Moses is steady, Aaron at his side, both trusting God's promise despite the chaos. You wonder if Moses doubts, even for a second, or if that burning bush still fuels his courage. Scholars still argue whether the Red Sea's parting was a natural wind-driven event or pure miracle. Was it a shallow reed sea or the deep Gulf of Suez? You're not sure. But the wind's howling now, unnatural and fierce. A quirky tidbit, Egyptians used seashells as spoons for eating soups. Picture a soldier dropping his shell spoon, staring at the sea's strange behavior. You smirk, but the mood's electric. Here's the strange event from the Bible. God sends a strong east wind, and the Red Sea splits, waters piling into walls, a dry path stretching before you. Your jaw dropped, watching waves tower, fish flopping on the exposed seabed. The Hebrews hesitate, then surge forward. You among them, sand crunching underfoot, the cloud still shielding you from Pharaoh's men. You're crossing the sea, walls of water shimmering, a surreal corridor. Kids giggle, touching the waves. While elders mutter prayers, you hear a distant shout. Pharaoh's army charges through the path, chariots rattling. Moses urges speed, and you're running, heart pounding. Then, as the last Hebrew steps out, Moses raises his staff again. You're stunned as the waters collapse, swallowing chariots, horses, soldiers. You're thinking, that's final. A joke pops up. What do you call a king who chases the sea, a drowned fool? You chuckle, but the victory's raw. You're on the far shore now. The sea calm again, debris bobbing. The Hebrews cheer, their voices rising. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank. A world away, in this moment of deliverance. You're sinking deeper. The waves echo fading as your eyelids droop. Freedom's real. And you're hooked. Ready for the Hebrews' next step into the wild unknown. You're on the far shore of the Red Sea. The waves now calm, lapping gently at the sand as if nothing happened. The air's alive with Hebrew cheers, their voices raw with relief and awe. Pharaoh's army drowned behind you. You're with Moses and Aaron, their faces glowing under the desert sun. The pillar of cloud still hovering like a divine GPS. Freedom's real, but the wilderness looms, and you're about to see how a fledgling nation celebrates and stumbles. Let's join the victory song, shall we? You're standing among the Hebrews, their bundles and goats scattered across the shore. Moses is near, staff in hand, his eyes scanning the crowd, while Aaron claps a man's shoulder, grinning. You wonder if Moses feels the weight of leadership now, with no seat apart, just people to guide. Scholars still argue whether this moment was pure triumph or a fleeting high before complaints began. Did the Hebrews trust Moses fully, or were doubts already creeping in? You're not sure. But the energy's electric, like a festival breaking out. A quirky tidbit: Egyptians danced at feasts, twirling with linen sashes. Picture a Hebrew woman borrowing the move today, spinning with joy. You smile, imagining her sash fluttering. Here's the strange event from the Bible, Miriam. Moses' sister grabs a tambourine and leads the women in a song and dance, praising God for the sea's miracle. You're caught up, watching her sway, her voice strong. Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The women join, their feet kicking sand, tambourines jangling. You're swaying too, the rhythm infectious. The seas crash a perfect beat. You're closer now, feeling the crowd's pulse. Men clap, kids mimic Miriam's steps, and even grumpy elders nod. You see Moses watching, his smile soft. Maybe he's remembering her as that girl by the Nile, guarding his basket. The song's a defiant thank you to God, but you sense fragility. This unity won't last. A joke pops up. What do you call a prophet sister with a tambourine, the original hype woman? You chuckle, but the moment's sacred. A rare pause before the desert tests them. You're back by the shore, the song fading as dusk settles. The pillar of cloud shifts, urging the Hebrews onward. You wonder if they're ready for what's next: hunger, thirst, or worse, that crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank. A faint echo in this joyful chaos. You're sinking deeper. The tambourines jangle, softening as your eyelids droop. The Hebrews are free, and you're hooked, ready for their wilderness journey to unfold. You're in the wilderness now, the Red Sea's triumph a fading echo as you trudge through the desert of Shur. Sand gritty under your sandals, the Hebrews surround you, their initial joy dimming under the sun's relentless glare. Their bundles heavier with each step. You're with Moses and Aaron, leading this sprawling crowd, the pillar of cloud drifting ahead like a silent guide. Freedom's sweet, but survival's no joke, and you're about to see how God provides when bellies growl. Let's taste this next chapter, shall we? You're weaving through the camp, past families dragging goats and kids whining for water. Moses is ahead, his staff tapping the ground, while Aaron soothes a grumbling elder. You wonder if Moses feels the pressure, thousands looking to him. No palace or Nile to lean on. Scholars still argue whether the Hebrews' complaints started from genuine need or ingratitude. Were they testing God's promise, or just human under stress? You're not sure. But the air's tense. Thirst and hunger gnawing at everyone. A quirky tidbit: desert nomads chewed resin from acacia trees to stave off hunger. Picture a Hebrew popping some in his mouth, grimacing at the bitter taste. You smirk, imagining his face. Here's the strange event from the Bible: God sends manna, a flaky, white substance like coriander seed, appearing on the ground each morning. You're awestruck, watching people scoop it up, their hands trembling with relief. It tastes like honey wafers, sweet and strange. And they call it, what is it? You're tempted to try some. It's scent mingling with dew. God instructs them to gather only what they need daily. Trusting for tomorrow, you're among the tents, seeing mothers knead manna into flatbread, kids licking their fingers. Some hoard extra, but it rots. Crawling with worms by dawn, a divine lesson in trust. You hear a man curse, tossing out his spoiled stash, and you wince at his frustration. Moses explains God's rules, his voice steady, but you catch grumbles. Freedom's hard when you're hungry. A joke pops up. What do you call bread from heaven? A crumb of faith. You chuckle. But the miracle's real, sustaining thousands in this barren waste. You're back near Moses, the pillar of cloud glowing faintly as night falls. The Hebrews eat, their faces softer, but you sense more tests ahead. Water's scarce, and the desert's unforgiving. That crocodile dung sunscreen from the riverbank. A cruel memory in this hungry march. You're sinking deeper, the manna's sweetness fading as your eyelids droop. The Hebrews are fed, and you're hooked, ready for their next step toward the promised land. You're deep in the wilderness, the desert of sin fading into the shadow of Mount Sinai, its rocky bulk looming like a silent promise. The Hebrews are camped around you, their tents a patchwork under the stars, the manna's sweet aftertaste still on your tongue. You're with Moses and Aaron, their faces weathered but resolute, the pillar of fire glowing softly, guiding this nation towards something bigger. You're feeling the journey's end nearing, aren't you? Let's rest at Sinai and reflect on Moses' wild path before drifting off. You're sitting by a campfire, its crackle mixing with the hum of voices, families settling, goats bleating. Moses is nearby, his staff leaning against a rock, his eyes on the mountain. You wonder if he's replaying it, all the Nile's basket, the palace, the murder, the burning bush, the plagues, the sea. Scholars still argue whether Sinai was the same Horeb where he met God, or if Moses saw this peak as the climax of his calling. Was it a homecoming or a new test? You're not sure. But the air feels sacred, heavy with purpose. A quirky tidbit desert nomads use dried dung for fuel, its smoky tang familiar to the Hebrews. Picture a kid tossing a pat into the fire, giggling at the smell. You smirk, but the mood's reflective. Here's the strange event from the Bible. God calls Moses to Sinai, promising to give the law, to guide the Hebrews as his people. You're watching Moses prepare, his steps slow, as if he knows this mountain will redefine everything. The camp buzzes with anticipation tablets, covenants, a nation forged. You're struck by the shift from slaves to a people with a purpose. You're closer now, hearing elders whisper of God's voice, kids asking about the mountain's glow. Moses' journey from fugitive to prophet feels complete here, yet you sense more trials ahead. You see a woman knead manna, her hands steady, and you feel the Hebrews' fragile hope. A joke pops up. What do you call a prophet climbing a holy hill? A guy with a rocky to-do list? You chuckle. But the moment's profound. Sinai's shadow wrapping you in awe. You're sinking deeper now. The campfire's glow softening, its warmth a gentle hug. The wilderness fades, Sinai's peak blurring into a dreamy haze. You hear the Hebrews' murmurs, softer, like a lullaby woven with manna's sweetness and Miriam's tambourine. Moses rests, his staff still. The Nile's cradle a distant memory, that crocodile dung sunscreen a forgotten jest. You're safe here, wrapped in the story's calm, the desert's vastness, a blanket of stars. Let the journey settle in your bones. Each plague, each miracle, a whisper of faith. Close your eyes, breathe slow, and drift. Freedom's yours tonight. Carried on God's promise. Sleep well. Dreamer, until the next tale calls.